Can creationists be real scientists?
Well, one of the questions that I get asked is, can creationists be real scientists? And that's something that I take rather personally as a creationist and as a scientist. Yes, of course, creationists can be scientists. And many of the scientists of the past have been creationists, and even in the present. I think of some of the greats of my own field of astrophysics. I think of Kepler, who developed the 3 laws of planetary motion. Kepler was a devout creationist, and yet you'll find his name in pretty much every astronomy textbook that's out there, because his contributions allowed us to predict the positions of planets much more accurately than had been done in the past. And he showed that planets sweep equal areas in equal times and develop their relationship between their period and the size of their orbit and so on. Really brilliant man, and he was a devout creationist, a young Earth creationist, by the way. I think of Isaac Newton. There's a name that everyone's heard of. Everyone's heard of the great Isaac Newton, one of the most brilliant men who ever lived. And yet Isaac Newton was a devout biblical creationist. He didn't believe in evolutionary notions. He believed that God created the universe according to the scriptures. He believed that the world was thousands of years old, apparently, because he confirmed Bishop Ussher's chronology of the world, which is a few thousand years old. And yet Isaac Newton was one of the greatest scientists that ever lived. He developed the laws of gravity and motion, and he formulated those laws and applied them to outer space, and was able to realize that planets orbit because of gravity and describe the nature of their orbits. He was able to prove Kepler's laws. Kepler had come along before Newton. And Isaac Newton he formulated the laws of gravity and motion and applied those to space. He basically developed the entire field of celestial mechanics. Brilliant mind. Newton was able to figure out what causes the little purple rainbow and when we look through a refracting telescope, and he designed a solution, the reflecting telescope, that gets rid of that. Newton developed the entire field of optics, co-discovered calculus. All these things were made up by this one man. He was a brilliant man and yet a biblical creationist. So of course scientists, creationists can be real scientists. That's not a problem. After all, the methods of science really have nothing to do with evolution. They all come out of a creation worldview. So when evolutionists and creationists do science, we're really doing it the same way. We assume that the universe is testable and repeatable and rational and logical, and that our minds are able to understand the universe. And if I do an experiment the same way, I'll get the same result even if I do it 20 times. We expect this underlying uniformity of the universe, and it works. And so we're able to put human beings on the moon and develop computers and so on because we all believe in observational science. When we talk about the past, we've left operational science, and we're talking about origin science. And that's where you attempt to answer a history question using methods of science. And there's nothing wrong with that, but ultimately a history question would be better answered by consulting a history book. If I wanted to find out how long George Washington lived, the best way to do it would not be to take one of his buttons and radiometrically date it. The best way to do it would be to look it up in a history book. And that's really what the Bible is. It's a history book that tells us when the universe began and how it came to be the way it is today. But that's why creationists and evolutionists come to different conclusions about the past, is because you see, we have a different view of history. We do origin science differently, but the way we do science in the present, operational science, is all the same.